Are we going to be able to stop this? Because I know there's more levels to it than what we're showing from your research.
They all emphasize this censorship and this secrecy. The reason why they're offended is because their power depends on people not knowing what they're doing with their money. These people have a government unto themselves that they've created with these NGOs that they run separately from us. That these people operate in different vocabulary with different rules, and they have made their own government inside ours with our money.
That's Data Republican, one of my favorite data analysts out there, who's on the front lines of the new rising techno-populism that's helping to take back our country. She puts it so perfectly. DOGE has exposed now for all the world to see. They pulled back the curtain and revealed that the powers that be have made their own government inside ours with our money. It's like a double insult. They have created their own government inside ours using our money to do it. Now, while that is certainly frustrating and maddening to realize, I really like what Peter St. Onge observed, and Elon Musk agreed in retweeting this, that one of the most exciting aspects of DOGE is it reveals that the entire world conquering radical left. This was supposed to be the communist, utopia, the world conquering radical left. Its entire world is actually fake. It's all a farce. It's all tax-funded astroturf. And what that means for any country right now is all you got to do is get a populist regime to come in just one time, doge your system, and the entire left will simply vanish. And we're seeing this in real time. Did you see this? Do you remember the media over the last few days? They've been reporting on all of these anti-DOGE, anti-Trump demonstrations that's happening in red states, right? Did you hear about this? So these are the talking points you're hearing on CNN, MSNBC. James Carville is pushing them through his oatmeal-crusted lips. You're hearing it everywhere. New York Times, Washington Post. All of these demonstrators are confronting Republican representatives in red states angry about DOGE and Trump. Turns out it's all fake. Every bit of it. It's all astroturf. It's all bought and paid for by two of Soros's organizations, Indivisible and Move On. These are paid protesters and paid propaganda brought to you by the legacy media that's on the same dole. This is why I'm so thankful that DOGE started with exposing USAID. To me, this is so key. This is what made starting with USAID so central, because Americans in general really don't much care for foreign aid. We tolerate it. We do it knowing, maybe some good can come of it. But when we discover that $1.3 million of our tax dollars are being used for adapting an LGBT inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys, whatever that means, or $10 million in DEI grants for colleges to study transgender lab animals, or $2.5 million to study the fertility of transgender mice. I mean, I didn't even know things like that were possible, right? I mean, obviously 99% of taxpayers are not going to want to have anything to do with any of that. Again, this is one of the arguments I make for the impossible task that the Democrats have before them. I mean, bless their hearts, but there is no way they're going to win this. They are trying in vain to politicize issues that are pre-political. That's why they have to pay protesters and pay the press to cover the protesters in a meaningful light and not let you know that they're paid. I think this is all just so key to understanding why the Democrats are in a no-win situation. And that's why they're in a polling free fall right now. They are trying to politicize issues that are pre-political. There is, as we speak, virtually universal support among voters, obviously, to rid the federal government of waste, fraud, and abuse. Who is going to defend that? And that support to rid the federal government of waste, fraud, and abuse precedes anyone's political affiliation. So that's what I mean by it is pre-political. You don't have to be a partisan to be against waste, fraud, and abuse. And so what the Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to partisanize what is in effect a pre-partisan or transpartisan issue. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the polls. Again, we've been talking a lot about the latest Harvard-Harris poll that just came out yesterday. I mean, it was a doozy because, again, it came out during the time that the media was pushing this narrative that voters in red states are getting upset with DOGE and Musk and Trump, which is not true. They have their own internal polling that they spend tens of millions of dollars on showing they're more popular than ever. And then the Harvard-Harris poll comes out. A public poll comes out. Private polls tend to be more accurate. But then you get this public poll coming out, and they found that 76% of voters supported a full-scale audit in our federal government so as to eliminate fraud and waste in government expenditures. 76%. So for Democrats to try to politicize what's so clearly pre-political is akin to trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's not working out for them. That's for sure. We can see it in the polls. We talked about that in our video earlier today. The congressional Democrats are now down to 21% approval. You can't get much lower than that. Hey, gang, time's running out to register for the America's Golden Age Summit. It's this Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's an online event, so you can enjoy it from the comfort of your own couch. You do not want to miss it. I've got an incredible lineup of guests ready to show you exactly how to prosper in this historic new golden age, from building wealth and getting healthy to thriving in the patriot economy. And here's the deal. Register today for $10 with promo code GoldenAge25 and get a free extra ticket to give away, plus loads of free bonuses, including 3 months of Courageous Conservatives Club membership. Time is running out, so don't wait. Secure your spot now at the link below, and I'll see you on Thursday. But supporting all those ridiculous programs really is USAID supporting all those ridiculous programs to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. As you can see, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real find, as we noted, is that DOGE is ultimately revealing that support for the political left in our nation, and I would surmise in Europe and around the world, is actually fake. It's a fraud. It's fabricated. It's manufactured. Not just in the protests, but in the press covering the protests. So there's a symbiotic relationship there. Remember, DOGE revealed that the press was getting the same money from the same USAID that so many of these far-left protesters are getting. That's how the system worked. So you might remember this. It was a few weeks back. Again, this is our 6th week into this, okay? We're just talking weeks at this point. Can you imagine what they're going to find in the next month? But just a few weeks back, DOGE uncovered the receipts that prove that the Biden administration paid the legacy media through USAID to attack Trump and the MAGA movement and to incessantly pimp for the Democrats. I mean, the big bombshell goes back even before Biden came to power and involved Politico. We now know that Politico received over $8 million in USAID funds. And guess which publication was solicited by the Biden campaign at the time to publish the 51 so-called intelligence experts claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? Guess who got that gig? Would you have guessed Politico? Well, you'd be absolutely right. Again, this was a classic case of the legacy media going full Judas here. They're abandoning their sacred call to speak truth to power and instead began speaking the power's truth. you want it like a sort of a, just an aphorism for what's happened with this bought and paid for media. They stopped speaking truth to power and began speaking the power's truth. So we now know we have the receipts from a leaked email from former CIA Director John Brennan that verifies that the 51 intelligence agents that endorsed the Hunter Biden laptop letter did it with the specific intent of enabling Biden to mislead the American people during his election campaign. The email sent out to all of these, again, so-called 51 intelligence experts explicitly stated that Biden needed a talking point to push back against Trump for the upcoming debate. Again, this was back in 2020. Now, did anyone, and I underscore that, did anyone in the legacy media report on that? Did anyone do any kind of, even just some semblance of investigative journalism on that? Well, of course not, because we now know, thanks to DOGE, that they were bought and paid for. All of this is just par for the course for all kinds of legacy media outlets who've been greased by the deep state with our tax dollars to write complimentary stories on the establishment, all the while bashing Trump and the MAGA movement and populist movements as a whole. And so, I have to, and again, I don't have any firsthand information on this at all, but isn't it interesting that now that gravy train has been cut off, isn't it interesting that there are so many layoffs at all these various legacy media outlets? I mean, think about it. We've got, we just had Joy Reid, Lester Holt was announced yesterday of NBC, Jim Acosta, Chuck Todd, Don Lemon. I mean, the list goes on and on. We've never seen a bloodbath like this, frankly. And now we're seeing the whole web of NGOs, like Data Republican was talking about at the very beginning. All these NGOs, like Soros's, getting dismantled as we speak. Data Republican reported on this a couple of weeks back. She exposed this 7-fold sort of web of NGOs, right? 7 non-governmental organizations. Note the ironic term there. Non-governmental organizations that are not supposed to have anything to do with the government. If you're not, who was it that said it? If your non-governmental organization is suffering because it's being cut off from government funds, then it is not a non-governmental organization. But Data Republican put together this chart of these 7 NGOs that she's calling the Uniparty Unmasked. And she and intelligence expert Mike Benz have been on the forefront of exposing the role these NGOs play in really what's nothing less than a mass money laundering operation involving tens of billions. Again, I know it hurts every time I say it, but it's tens of billions of our tax dollars being funneled to left-wing causes. And what Data Republican found was that all of these NGOs are controlled by establishment politicians. All these NGOs play a major role in shaping political narratives worldwide. And their common core mission, the way they justify their existence, is, as you may have guessed, they are here to, quote, protect democracy. Now, ironically, originally, yes, that is why these NGOs were created in the first place. It was to support U.S. democratic efforts abroad, many of them emerging during the period of the Cold War to combat the spread of worldwide communism. But with the fall of the Soviet Union back in December of 1991, obviously their original purpose faded. And instead of dissolving, because remember the Reagan maxim, the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program, right? Instead of dissolving, they simply redefined their mission. Now they were going to be the guardians of democracy itself, but most particularly against rising populist movements that started particularly in Europe in the 1990s. So these astroturfed NGOs explain precisely why Trump's reelection was framed, might I add, unanimously by the whole of the establishment as a threat to democracy. That unanimity was, in the end, it goes back to these supposedly Democrat defending NGOs that were funneling out all of this money in order to defeat Trump They were all there to defend democracy. So that's where, I mean, the gravy train was all about defending democracy. Every penny, keep in mind, every penny of that was our money. It was our tax dollars, just to make it even a little more painful. Remember, we're finding out Soros does not spend his own money. He doesn't spend his billions on his open society foundations. Elon Musk was just tweeting out on this. You and I fund it. We fund Soros's operations to the tune, again, of hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe $250 million over the last 15 years. So while I know that's infuriating to even consider, the exciting thing in all of this is how it's all being unmasked. We're learning every day more and more how this entire left-wing apparatus was always completely and totally artificial. It was all astroturf. The woke grassroots in the end turns out to be really no more than about 10 to 20% of the population, which is interesting because that does correspond to the stats that we have of people who are actually woke. The true believers in wokeness really are no more than about 10, 15, more generously 20% of the population. 80% of the population, including the majority of those on the left, want nothing to do with it. The liberal left have been artificially sustained through our tax dollars for years now. And the good news is that those days have officially come to an end. By the way, the artificiality of the far left is precisely why I would argue Trump and the MAGA movement was able to so soundly defeat them. I mean, if you think it through, Trump wasn't just, I feel like as a Philly fan or as a Birds fan here with the Eagles. The Eagles weren't just against the Kansas City Chiefs; they were against the whole of the NFL, right? That's what we are. Same with Trump; he wasn't just against Kamala. He was up against the entire multi-billion-dollar establishment, right? It wasn't just Kamala's $2 billion campaign that she burned through that he was fighting. It was all of these NGOs, these so-called guardians of democracy, that were each getting hundreds of millions of dollars, totaling billions, that were doing everything they could to defeat him and us by greasing both protesters and press. And it all failed. He's more popular now than he's ever been. And in that light, I think what Aesthetica said was so good here. Quote, "What we're finding out in real time is the entire modern left is just smoke and mirrors. There's no left-wing voter base. All the elections are rigged and fake. All the liberal media outlets have no audience and are kept alive by USAID funding. All their politicians and political pundits are paid by USAID to say what the government wants. The whole thing was a house of cards." Again, very much akin to what Peter St. Onge observed earlier and what Elon agreed with in his retweet, that one of the most exciting aspects of DOGE is it suggests the entire world-conquering radical left is actually fake. It's all a farce. It's all tax-funded astroturf, which means that all any country needs now to do is to have a single populist uprising to take over just once, in turn, DOGE their entire system, and the entire left will simply vanish. That, to me, is what I think we're seeing today, and it's just getting started.